On the outset of this, Minister, there isn't one person in this House or in the Dáil that hasn't got a green agenda or wants the environmental to work. But there has to be a common sense approach here. If you want to interact and you want people to get electric cars, you have to incentivise it. If you want people not to be using their cars, you've got to give public transport. And I've proven without a shadow of a doubt there is no public transport in rural areas. And that's towns, villages and rural areas. You may have it here in the cities, you may have it in the larger cities, but you don't have it once you leave the 50-kilometre speed limit outside of any city. There is very little rural transport and it can't work. So I want to save my planet, but I want to use it in a common sense approach. My car does almost 1,000 kilometres to a tank. That's what it does. It's a diesel car. 1,000 kilometres to one tank. That to me is, I'm doing my best coming up and down to Dublin here because there's no infrastructure to carry me up by train because there's no train going home if it's too late. There's no place for me to park my car if I want to use bus transport. So that's not there. So the cheapest form for me to come to Dublin is my car, which burns 1,000 kilometres. So I've been listening for the last 2 days of deputies in this House and the last couple of weeks over the fuel increases and this should be done and this should be done. I'd like to remind the public that on the 16th of June, the TDs that put through a deeply damaging climate action bill, which means extra cost in your goods, extra electricity bills, the culling of the cow herd, ending of turf cutting and the increase in fuel. 34 Fianna Fáil TDs voted for a climate action bill. 27 Fine Gael TDs voted for a climate action bill. 12 Green Party. All 6 of the Labour Party voted. The Social Democrats, Solidarity People Before Profit, 5 of them voted for it. 5 of the regional group voted for it. 30 of Sinn Féin voted for it. The rural independents voted against it. It worked out that the independent group 4 voted for it and 2 voted against it. These are the same people that have been standing up here day in, day out saying it's a disgrace and they're hammering off the government saying it's a disgrace. And they voted for it. For all these cuts, all the opposition parties, bar 10 independents. And I was actually missing that day. I was in hospital myself. Otherwise the vote would have been 128-11. At least I stand up and I have my morals and I will say it as it is. Everyone else in this House, bar 10 independent TDs, voted against it. The rest voted for it. And they're here day in and day out. And RTE are giving them the full coverage of it, saying that, oh, we're against the government. When every one of these TDs now have voted for the fuel costs. They've voted for the ESB costs, except for the 10 independents that voted against it. Because why? We were saying we're not against it, but we want infrastructure put in place so we can all work with it and we can all work together. But there is no infrastructure. On our PMB this morning, I would like to highlight the first point, which is to immediately act on the European Commission DIY toolkit aimed at migrating the impact of higher energy costs. We must slash taxes and offer help to impact household, motorists and industry. I spoke last week on the haulage cost. The impact on every household in Ireland bringing food to your table is a primary objective. Minister, I am appealing to you on European grounds to take the lead, like other European countries have done, in increasing the cap for the fuel allowances for the truckers. The rebate scheme for the truckers is that in every other country they've actually taken it up to, we're at 7.5 cents. Other European countries are gone to 26 cents to counteract what is going to happen, which is the knock-on effect. If the fuel prices are higher, our haulage is higher. That means our food coming in out of our shops is getting dearer. Everything, materials, is higher. Why haven't you done the same as every other European country? They have the rebate scheme for the trucks. To increase the rebate scheme. You can go up to 16 cents a litre like that, which would 100% stop the rising cost of transport in this country. You're spending 8 billion on retrofitting houses, even though the house that we're talking about spend 1 tank of oil a year, which a truck burns in a week. The only form of transport we have of getting our food, our transport, our kids to school is the diesel engine. We've asked you to spend 108 million in the transport section to upgrade trucks to Euro 6 engines, which those engines then can be modified down the line for more emissions savings. But you decide to spend 8 billion on retrofitting houses, and 108 million would drop the carbon emissions on trucks with 108 million. There's no common sense whatever in it. But I will tell you, on the 24th of November, and it's probably the only way that the government here will listen, like they've done in France and other areas, they're going to block Dublin. On the 24th of November, you're going to see a convoy of trucks come to Dublin. They're going to block the whole place. And I think the only way that you're actually going to listen to the people outside of Dublin and outside of the city-based areas is if we turn off the lights in you for a week. And let's see how you last then. Because that's what happens to us. We have, and the rural independents, are fighting for equality. That's what we're fighting for. We're not fighting climate change. We're fighting for equality, that everyone can be incentivised to bringing down the carbon emissions, but we have to have the same infrastructure that you have. I drove in this morning in here to the Dáil, and I was watching buses again, and these open-top buses, not one person inside them. So we took an account from about 5 kilometres out as we're coming in, and I think it was 38 buses that we passed. And I'd say in all the buses that are here that we passed coming in, there wasn't 100 people between all of them. 38 buses and 100 people inside them. And yet we're in the countryside and we're trying to get our kids to school, and the buses are at capacity trying to get us there. Our private bus people are trying to get our children to school at a minimum cost by the government, subsidised through bus air. You have never incentivised anything outside of the city areas. You have to invest in infrastructure. You have to invest and incentivise for people to come with you. If you incentivise, people will come with you and work with you. But you're going to do nothing that way. So what you're looking at the moment, and your local area plans, your national development plans, it's showing between 65% and 70% of the people, you want them to move into the cities. That's what the LDA was all about. Everything was built in Housing City. Not one house was to be built in the county. Why? Because you get extra numbers into the cities means that the extra population will give you extra TDs, so which means you can keep control of the Dáil with the extra people in the cities. There's 37% of the population live in a rural area. But I said it at the very start, I want the 37% of the people in the rural areas to remember who voted for a climate action bill in this House without any infrastructure being put in place. That's the main message that we've got to put across to the people. 1.9 million miles a day to keep food on our tables. This is what the truckers do. And you put all money into retrofitting rather than trying to bring down emissions. Solar panels, heat pumps, all to be incentivised. But yet, anyone that has put in the solar panels have been told that that they're not allowed to send their electricity back to the grid. There's some technicality in the way that they can't get back to the grid. The farming, the ash dieback, in 2009, you were told about it. In 2012, there was an instrument made to stop trees coming from Holland. And now, it was under your own government that this happened. And now what happens? You now offer them €1,000 to fix it and no income for the next 20 years.
Thanks, Deputy.